Just as FYI, full disclosure, that okay, you are being recorded. So it is 11 o'clock. We will give it one more minute and then we'll start. Yeah, I think let's get started.
Thanks, Vikas. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we have participants across, I think, so all locations. Thanks for joining. So we would like to start this session by introducing our forum. I mean, most of you guys are aware about EliteCISO, but again, I want to give a brief introduction to everyone, also to Beenu and Rich, so that they are aware about what we do and how we do it. So EliteCISO is the fastest growing cybersecurity community for the CISO by the CISO. So it's been founded by the CISO like Vikas, Fal, Anuprita, and other members, and it's all the members are CISOs of this forum. It's a private member-only forum for the global information security leaders working in various sectors, whether it's a private or public sectors organization. Uh, Being at the senior position, we also realize that there are certain initiatives we should take as a community. So we take a lot of initiatives. Couple of them are scheduling knowledge base or knowledge sharing webinars, like one of the session what we have today. Then we also schedule a lot of motivational talks and the sessions where we ensure that the motivation is given to all the leaders and they can do better in their life as well as in their career. We also initiate, or we also have a lot of initiative around personal health building activities where we have a lot of sessions or maybe an actual participations in various physical activity, whether it's a marathon or other activities. And along with that, we also have various social initiatives where we interact with people in different sections and communities, and we create a cybersecurity awareness amongst them as well. So overall, we have 8 chapters and we conduct extensive knowledge sharing events across all the chapters. So we welcome all new members by invitation, strictly controlling the admission to reflect the appropriate seniority so that we don't have any people who are just coming there and interacting with us who may not have the proper adequate position as well as knowledge, and a good diversity of industries and length of tenure. Member are individuals registered and verified to maintain the integrity of group and ensure quality of discussion and interaction. So if you are part of C-suite or a cybersecurity leader, please join us. And even if you are not part of C-suite, still you can subscribe to our various initiatives through our website. You can go to EliteCISOs.com, where you can have a button called subscribe. You subscribe to that and you get receive all the initiatives and event information on your mailbox. So I'm looking forward to getting all of you engaged in our all the activities and initiatives. Any questions you guys have for EliteCISOs? Okay. So now I want to introduce our today's session. So today's session is about understanding cybersecurity in banking, financial services, and insurance domain. It's BFSI industry, uh, where Beenu and Richard, our speaker, they will deep dive into the cybersecurity challenges in financial sectors. Especially the part will be covered here is cybersecurity trends and the evaluation of financial frauds, information trading in the deep and dark web, specifically the trends, what we can see and what are the implication of those dark web trends, and the future of cybersecurity in the financial domain, where the mitigation becomes a very critical standpoint. So I would like to quickly introduce our speaker. Beenu is our first speaker. He He is an entrepreneurial senior technology strategist and a cybersecurity leader with an MBA from the London Business School and Columbia Business School. He has overall 15 years of extensive experience with the international and cross-functional technology domain, cybersecurity risk consulting and transformation programs in financial and various other industries. He's an official member of Forbes Technology Council. It's one of the recognized council in the world, and it's very difficult to be an official member. So Beenu is one of the official members there. He holds various cybersecurity certifications such as CISSP, CISM, CISA, OSCP. I mean, it's endless and SAPSA and many more. So there are so many credentials Beenu has in his feather. And then we have Richard. Richard is having again more than 20 years of extensive cybersecurity experience. He is also CISSP certified. He's very dynamic and active and highly skilled cybersecurity executive with domestic and international experience. His core competency are more into cybersecurity and risk management, security strategies, cloud security architect, and various security framework development. So hand over to you, Beenu and Richard. If I miss anything in the introduction, you guys can cover it and we can start the session.
I think you covered really well, and thank you so much for having us today, EliteCISO team. It's an honor and a privilege to be in this forum and being able to share some insights and our point of view, or maybe some observations we are seeing in the most, I should say, active sector, which is a BFSI. Before I go into the introduction about the Cyble as a team, I do want to share that as an organization, what Cyble's specialization is giving organizations a 360-degree view of their digital risk landscape. What we specialize most of our resources upon, where we spend a lot of our resources upon, is getting insights into the deep web, dark web, and cybercrime forums. With that said, I will move to the introduction slide about Cyble as a team. So as you can see, myself over there, I'm the founder and CEO. And I met my partner in crime, or my partner, Manish Chichara, who is based out of the US. He's also on this call. Along with both of us, we've got a wonderful team of real good executioners in the capability streams, such as Melanie. And of course, some of you might already be aware of the rockstar Mandar Patil, who is also in this call, along with Thomas Sia, who looks after our business development. Rich, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well, if you don't mind?
Sure. Again, my name is Rich Sands. I think they did a great introduction to begin with, but in short, I've been in cybersecurity for 20 plus years, and I'm an advisor to Cyble. I believe in this company. I think they do some amazing things, so I'm happy to help and support.
Thank you, Rich. And for those who don't know, Rich has been my mentor for more than a decade. Very, very known and reputed cybersecurity practitioner. So kudos and thank you so much, Rich, for joining this forum. Along with myself. So let's get to the crux, or just to go to some of the agenda. And over to you, Rich.
Yeah, thank you for that, Beenu. And again, thank you everybody for having us on the call. This is fantastic. So today we're going to talk a little bit about an overview of the financial services industry, some of the observations that we're seeing. So Beenu will speak to that. Couple case studies, and we'll talk about some mitigation strategies, and then to the Q&A section. There's a lot of really good content coming here. If we go too fast, raise your hand, tell us to slow it down, but there's just so much happening in the space right now that we kind of want to get through it. Beenu, next slide, please. So, what's happening in the financial services industry? You guys know most of this already. I'm not going to go into any great depth, but what's happening? It's out of necessity. You guys are in one of the most amazing industries to be in right now. With everything happening with COVID, people needing to have access to their money, their insurance, and all the other key things that you need to do to live their life. And everyone feels disrupted right now because of COVID. And, I know in India, it's hitting pretty hard. In the US, I won't even go into how difficult it can be here. So you are in a fantastic industry. So kind of talking about that necessity again, demonetization in India, in other countries as well, that's actually making us need to be smarter in the way that we do business, the way that we actually go about serving our customers and meeting our customers' needs. You're also in an industry that has a lot of competition, a lot of different businesses trying to do similar things. And then you have these upstarts, these fintechs coming in that are coming up with new creative ways to do things and leveraging digital, leveraging technology advancements. And that's an area where we need to make sure we focus on. You're going from brick and mortar and data centers to public cloud. I mean, who would have thought you'd have financial transactions going through public cloud? So with that being the case, how do we protect that? How do we make sure we manage the risk? How do we make sure we understand what level of risk we're willing to take? Do you want to take that risk? Is you going to save enough money to do it? What's going to happen if all hell breaks loose? As we kind of think about other new technology advancements, you have blockchain, you have artificial intelligence. Think about robots. How are robots going to impact your industry? Instead of going up to a teller, are you going to have a robot there similar to an ATM, but more personable? Someone that's able to understand your customer's intelligence, kind of like EQ, IQ type things. Someone that can actually read them and understand them, hopefully upsell them on whatever it is that you're trying to do. So there is so much going on in this space. It is absolutely crazy, but it also means there's lots of challenges, more complexity in the systems than we've ever had before, more opportunity to break, more partners we're dealing with, more supply chain issues, disparate systems that you're trying to interrelate. So there's so much going on. So what does this mean? Well, it means our attackers have a lot more of a landscape to go after. So what can they do? Before, if you had everything sitting behind 10,000 firewalls in a walled off data center, that's one thing. Now that you have customer data sitting out in the web, pretty much anywhere to make sure it's easy access, it also means it's easy access for threat actors. And they're either going after customer information or sometimes they're going after the money. So when you think of nation states breaking into banks, as you guys probably know quite well in India and Bangladesh and a few other countries, trying to steal money. So there's a lot of different things happening from a geopolitical perspective. So that gives a brief overview. What I'm going to do is hand over to Beenu now, who can go into some of the down and dirty stuff that happens.
Thanks, Rich. And Rich, as you rightly mentioned, I mean, the range or the variety of cyber criminal groups, from no voice to the state sponsor, I think the motives are very different when they're targeting the financial and the insurance sector. It should be noted that it's not new when the banking sector is attacked by cyber criminals, because banks have already been targeted by robbers in the past when there was no digitalization, and now it's attacked through cyber channels. And the modus operandi when it comes to attacking any bank or any insurance company it's pretty interesting from what we have seen in the market. So it's not necessarily an act of an individual. Of course, there is always a mastermind who is planning all this stuff. There has to be a chief strategy officer when it comes to conducting a cybercrime operations. But there are a bunch of people who are involved in these particular in these cybercrime rings. So somebody has to create a virus or a malware which they can drop to a potential victim, and then that malware needs to propagate or needs to elevate its privileges to some of the crown jewels, and then exfiltrate data. And then the exfiltrated data can then be used to extract money from ATMs and from different places. And that's how the typical, from the initiations where you have a technical programmers like virus writers, all the way to money mules who are, collecting the actual money from the bank itself. So it's a very, very, I would say, organized operations, which are also being followed by the cyber criminals. So the part is you're not dealing with some people. It's probably a large group of people spread across different places, all the way from Eastern European to the US. So they're quite spread out, and the motivation is driven from all the way to just screw with the banks to all the way they want to extract money, and maybe for some geopolitical purposes. It should also be noted that some of the advanced which I will be talking in the coming slides are not necessarily just after the money. as most of you would agree from an economic standpoint, a financial system is the backbone of any nation. And if you are able to disrupt those financial systems, nervous system for that matter, then that can have a it can have profound impact on the livelihood of an average people or persons on the street. Uh, so it's quite sophisticated in terms of how it's being done, and the scale is just is huge from what we have seen firsthand ourselves. Now the key part is who is after financial sector? What are they targeting? What are their motivation? And how do this stuff? How do you actually hack into these different banks or different organizations dealing in the digital insurance products? And the answer is there are many threat actors which are out there. Now we decided to put some of them which are probably known on the internet that they are linked to hacking into the companies or banks for that matter, and the motivation for them are mostly straightforward financials. There are a number of groups such as Lazarus groups, for an example, who have hacked into a number of banks in the past. And as Rich mentioned earlier about in reference to Bangladesh, when the SWIFT network was abused in order to extract millions of dollars from the bank, these are some of the most sophisticated crime we are seeing from these threat actors with the clear purpose of collecting the money. And they approach it's not that different from each other, if you understand what I mean here. If we really map out their techniques using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's end of day starts with a potential. They're trying to mess around with a login form by brute forcing it or sending a spear phishing or a phishing emails to some of the key employees. They think about from an army analogy. They will find the targets. They will then prepare a bomb. They will drop the bomb on the target. Then the bomb explodes and it does something. It's the same way on how cybercriminals does. They have to create a weapon, find the target, drop the malware in, get access to the network, and do all the cool stuff or crazy stuff in some cases to basically achieve their motives or their agendas. What we also have noticed is a number of these threat actors are targeting not just one specific country. I mean, we will share with you in later slides of some of the interesting threat actors which we are seeing emerging out there. But these threat actors are, again, targeting cross region or cross countries at the moment. So it's not like they're just trying to hack into the banks in India or insurance companies in India. They're targeting pretty much anything which they can get hand on in Asia, for an example. So that's a very interesting aspect which we also noticed as part of our research. And in terms of what these hackers are trying to achieve, or let's assume that these hackers are able to get access to some of the bank's crown jewels or gain access to the infrastructure for that matter. They can do a lot of things with that. And I'll give you some very, some basic examples, but that will give you some highlight. Like for an example, where the threat actors are, gaining access to the Active Directory of one of the largest insurance products selling company out of India, and they are trying to sell that access, which is domain admin level access to other cyber criminal groups, which in these cases mostly is being purchased by the ransomware groups. So think about the ransomware operators are not different from how the cybercrime operators work. They have a pretty similar mode of operations where the initial entry to the environment, they may not do it themselves. They will buy access from somebody else and then use it to drop their ransomwares and exfiltrate data. So you can see for a ransomware group to create havoc on these in many of these banking systems, just take like $20,000 for that matter. They get the domain admin privileges and they can lock up all their systems and exfiltrate all the data if they want to. A number of examples we are seeing with not just with the Indian banks, but across Asia, including Philippines, Indonesia, and even Latin America and the US. And some of those examples, you can see it over here as well. But that's just, I say tip of the iceberg. I mean, when we go deeper into the cybercrime activities, you would also see that people who are selling access to the point of sale interfaces, which are inadvertently or because of human error are exposed on the internet, and now cyber criminals got access to it. And a number of examples, which have been put out on the news articles, and I'm sure some of you may have heard about the POS or point of sale malware such as RDPOS, MMON, PONPOS, which are some of the key malware samples or rats which we have seen actively targeting POS machines out there. A number of phishing campaigns, financial services or banking sector observed with TinyPaws malware, which happened quite recently as well. So these are just some of the examples what we are seeing in the dark web and the deep web markets, and cybercrime, of course, where hackers are not just gaining access to it, but they obviously want to trade the information and do something about it. It further extends. So sometimes hackers are not interested to just hack into the banks. They also are interested to sell access to the bank accounts. So people who have got maybe reasonable amount of funds in their bank account, and they just want to sell access to it. It should be noted that when these hackers are able to penetrate into these bank accounts, they're not necessarily trying to brute force this. I mean, most of the banking systems these days are sophisticated enough to prevent these password attacks or brute force attacks from happening. What happens is a lot of customers who haven't turned on two-factor authentication for whatever reason, because I think most of the banks already provide it, but still some people choose to opt out of it. In those cases, using the techniques such as credential stuffing, or the techniques where hackers are able to steal their browser or cookie logs, they are then utilizing those information or telemetry to gain access to their banking records. And these accesses can be sold for as low as for $5 and can go up to $10,000 depending on how much deposit the victim has at that point in time. So the range really vary. And what we also notice is Cyble, as an organization, we are aware of more than 1,300 cybercrime markets where the hackers are actively trading, exchanging, buying, selling information all the time. And that's just not on the websites or on a Tor page which you go in. These are also happening on P2P chats, Telegram messages, key-based apps. So there's so many different channels which the hackers are utilizing, similar to how a typical user would do it. Even WhatsApp, to an example. And when they create these smaller marketplaces where they are trading information, that's how Cyble also learn about what they are actually trying to trade and what they're trading with. So using our technology, we also scrap a lot of data, which they are putting it out on these cybercrime forums, including Telegram chats. And that's how we get to learn about, hey, what is this entity trying to sell over here? So that's a very important aspect when it comes to understanding that the threat actors are not necessarily trying to just hack a big bank to make the most buck out of it. They also target the individual end customers, which I think everybody is concerned about. And by extension of it, it's just not bank accounts. They go all the way up to selling credit cards or trying to clone credit cards for that matter. It may not be a surprise that there are a number of organized cyber criminals, including in India, who are actively collecting the bins of different banks and then trying to create those fraudulent cards at the same time. Now the card or pin, the card's pin technology has improved significantly, but it depends on the point of sale we are using it. You may still be able to make those unauthorized transactions. I think what we have also seen is that you can effectively clone a credit card in less than $1 in the dark web markets. You basically can get a template, like an Adobe Reader template, like how a credit card should look like. You can just change the number, same, so just print it out and put it on a plastic, and off you go. And that's what we also observe. In a couple of months ago, we also came across a new market, which is not Joker Cash. I mean, there's a lot of credit card selling markets, and I'm sure some of you already have seen those. But these markets come and go all the time. So, one of the markets which we came across was which suddenly put like 80,000 credit card out there for selling, and the price point was less than $5. And they also had a lot of those credit cards coming from the Indian banks as well. And ironically, they also put in the emails of those people who those cards belongs to. So that's just an interesting observation which we came across, and something we do come across a lot these days. It shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of the banks are not just banks, actually, for the matter. I think a lot of organizations are now being targeted because through their third parties or their suppliers. Now, banks have been always very proactive when it comes to dealing with cyber risk. And I think there was a comment by Bank of America's chairman who said that the only department which doesn't have a cap on the budget is cybersecurity. The point is, the banks, the board of directors, the CEOs of banks, they will continue to invest in cybersecurity aspects. So they're investing heavily on technology. So buying the best tools out there and being more proactive in protecting their own infrastructure and the customers. However, what often is which is the biggest exposure is the third parties, the trust you are building with the other third parties. So for an example, you outsource one of your apps to a third party, and the third party accidentally left some sensitive credentials out there, which they just commented it and remove it, and it was still working. And the third party obviously uses all different tools, and if that third party get compromised, then by extension it affects the bank as well. And this is a very common trend which we see out there. So the whole point on why we as industry are investing in cyber is not that we're going to be able to reduce or make the cyber attacks to zero. There's no way we can do that. What we are trying to do is making these cyber attacks as costly as possible by putting some mitigating controls along the chain. However, the risk actually comes down to the point where you have third parties, and a lot of organizations we have seen in the last 12 months alone who were victimized not because there was a flaw in what they were doing, it's because the third party was compromised, which was holding your crown jewels. So that's an interesting aspect which we are seeing. And I think in the screenshot, you can also see that somebody was selling access to some developer company which was building products for a bank. So that's a very important insight we want to share with you. And then not to mention one of the biggest threats, which I think not just the banks, but I think across the entire industry is coming from the ransomware operators. It's very important to note that I think the ransomware became like mainstream, or people started talking about is since WannaCry. I think that's where the biggest buzz came out. Though the ransomware has been out there since late 2000. What we have seen as Cyble is the number of ransomware operators have quadrupled in the last 12 months. So today we are monitoring over 30 unique ransomware threat actors or threat groups at the moment who are targeting the range of industries. So they're not specific to banking. They will basically try to hack into any company for that matter. And they have a very clear framework: hack, lock, and steal. So they will basically go and hack into the companies, and for that reason they're not necessarily hacking it themselves. They pretty much outsource that activity to somebody else for that matter. And in this case, you would see like Avedon, which is one of the ransomware group. It's largely defunct now, but this is just an example which you can see with who is actively recruiting hackers in the cybercrime markets, who can not just gain access to the companies they're targeting, but where they have purchased the access to a large organization, they want to use these hackers to further elevate their privileges and exfiltrate the data without raising suspicion or without raising the flags. So it's very and these ransomware threats are not going to stop anytime soon, largely because of the reason it's highly profitable for them. So the ransomware groups, there are, again, public reports that groups such as Maze, for an example, they made more than $100 million based on the ransom extortion they gained from the market. And I think it's a very basic concept of supply and demand. So if there is supply of funds, these groups going to keep evolving. And I think one of the biggest challenge as an industry is all about when you are in that situation, what are you going to do about it? Often a lot of companies do not have robust, backups or recovery or business continuity processes in place. So they are left with some difficult choices in some scenarios. But these groups are not stopping anytime soon. And that's where things becomes more dirty. Naturally, there are a number of leak sites out there in the dark web for a number of hacker groups who are, again, if they're not being paid, they're going to start leaking the data on their leak sites. Now that's a trend which is something a lot of other ransomware groups have also copied along the time, and they are basically forcing these organizations to pay for for the damages they are doing at the moment. In from our perspective, I think what has happened is most of the mature organizations, especially the ones who actually had a cyber insurance in place, they did the right thing by not paying the extortion, and they basically moved on to their standard recovery processes. In some cases where organization did not have the right processes in place, or they did not have the right team to be able to deal with the situation, this is what has resulted the damages to them. I'm going to pause here. Rich, do you want to add anything more on this particular point?
Waiting for my mic to unmute there. No, you're exactly right. What we're seeing out there in terms of the industries I've been working in is there's ransomware. They're asking for money. You pay it, you don't pay it, you're in trouble, right? So the most important thing you can do is make sure you have strong backups, a BCP plan, and then practiced. Know what you're doing and understand where all the different key systems and data resides. If you don't know where the data is, you don't know how your systems work together, then it's not going to work. So for organizations that have to go through GDPR and CCPA and other regulatory things, a lot of that mapping is already done. But if you're not in a regulated environment, I suggest that you do that because it makes the most sense to have that. If you pay a ransomware operator, nothing says they're not going to come back and re-encrypt you the next day, right? So You need to make sure you can recover.
And that has happened a lot, by the way. So a number of victims which we are aware of, they were asked ransom not once, like thrice. At the same time, even they promised to delete the data, it actually was still leaked out for whatever reason. So, I mean, there are organizations like Covert, and they have put some nice blogs about it as well. Because the ransomware group actually have also expanded significantly in size because of what they have done, they're also becoming, unorganized in some way, right? So they are not agreeing to what the terms they agreed upon initially. So basically, there's some, so there's no guarantee, and that even if you pay the ransom, that your data is very protected. So something
We're
to keep. We're
talking about criminals here, right?
Exactly. Spot on, Rich. I think the next thing, which is all about, is the trending, which is very important. The attacks on the financial sector is growing quite rapidly. And I don't think that's a news to everybody. I think there are a lot of breaches which is currently happening. I mean, Cyble alone has disclosed, or actually have found, more than 14,000 breaches this year. A very handful of them actually are in the public, but a lot of them are actually not even public yet. So these breaches is not going to stop because the hackers are not going to stop themselves. Phishing URLs, the good old 90s, cyber attack channel is still very active. There's still a lot of phishing attacks which people are facing. There are public reports suggesting that over 80% of successful cyber attacks originates from a spear phishing campaign, or phishing is involved there, which makes sense and something we all have seen it and experienced it to an extent. What we
and,
are,
I just want to interject on that as well.
Yeah.
It's wire transfer frauds. We are seeing so much of that in the industry I'm in right now. It's insane because it's either a message coming from the CEO to force someone in finance to change an account number, move money. It's a whole bunch of different tricks that they try to do, and you really need to watch out for it. So.
Absolutely, Rich. And I think one of the recent examples was within Australia. So one of the Sydney hedge funds actually faced the exact same scenario where somebody said, a CEO email goes out. Again, that's a email from a hacker saying, I need you transfer this much money ASAP. So all these, especially people who are not used to dealing with the C-suite and they suddenly get an email from a C-suite asking to something, people often take it as a pressure and just get it done. Whereas I think in reality, people should be suspicious and take it by caution, right? Why is my CEO asking me to do something which he never asked me before? So something to keep in mind, and not to forget about it. But these attacks are quite prevalent, highly successful, and probably the easiest way the hackers are able to harvest a large sum of money from the victims without having any support or any back-end operations to do all these cybercrime activities management. Ransomware attacks are still going to be prominent, not just attacking financial, but insurance sectors as well. Cyble is aware of a number of insurance companies globally, including in India, who became victim to a ransomware attack. I think most of the mature organizations, especially the ones who actually has security contact in place, they are at least aware of how to respond to these situations with the right approach. I think the cyber breaches, the cyber attacks ought to happen. They will happen to everybody, including to Cyble. So it all boils down to how you choose to respond to those incidents. I think that's really the crux out of it. Synthetic frauds, which for those who are not aware, people who are able to copy the identities of other people and do fraudulent transactions, are also increasing quite rapidly. In India, specifically because of the number of breaches which are happening from left, right, center, and because of probably less of a regulatory landscape where people can deal with sensitive information without much of compliance or obligations, that's actually causing a lot of data spill across the entire internet, let alone the dark web. So you can actually go and find Aadhaar card of people just by Googling on the internet. Think about that part. So with more, with increased integrations of these social security number equivalent in India with the banking sector, these frauds are expected to even increase further. And we're seeing, there are public reports from RBI where there are tens of thousands of reports where people are reporting financial frauds which happen to them. And there are statistics, or actually numbers, from companies like Economic Times, where an independent activist suggested that India has lost over $20 billion US dollars in the last 1 year because of these cyber crime frauds alone. And we think that this is going to be increasing as well as we go on. Now, some of the interesting threat actors which got our attention, quite a lot, to be honest, is an organized cybercrime group, which we believe is operating from Eastern Europe. And this group has been active since 2015 to our knowledge and our research. They initially came across as agnostic players, and their modus operandi is pretty straightforward. They basically will hack into any company via phishing attacks or by seeing any sensitive credentials which are left in code repositories. And I'm sure, as Rich mentioned, because of the digitizations, not just the banking, but insurance sector are also using a lot of digital products. And they also work with a lot of tech companies these days. So a lot of insurance companies, for an example, they are opting to go and work with young tech startups, for that matter, when it comes to generating the leads or processing the leads or even distributing their products digitally. And that's where these hackers have, gained their foothold by targeting some of those technology companies who are large enough now, and because of some human error or mistakes, they managed to gain access to some of their crown jewels, and from there they pivoted into the back end or their main company which were working with them. And this group, Shiny Hunters, has been quite popular. Cyble believes that their leader is based out of France, and I mean, this is again based on our research and analysis. Again, this is just one person of his image you're looking at, but there are a number of other operators of this particular group who are, we think, or what we believe based on our research, are operating from all the way from France, Germany, UK, as well as Canada. So it's a very distributed group, but highly effective in terms of when they are able to hack into various large organizations. Now, this group is quite relevant in this particular session because the group has been quite active in trying to hack into a lot of companies in India as well. So a number of security incidents which have happened recently were directly attributed to this particular group as well. And not to mention that they have also conducted a number of attacks against the neo bankings or the payment service providers or wallet companies and insurance companies as well. The list goes long, very long for this group. So something we believe that as an industry participant, my recommendation to everybody on the call is just make sure you check your code bases if there is no sensitive credentials like AWS secret keys are out there. If you're using cloud environment, make sure you reset your keys at least once every 3 months or once every quarter to make sure that these old keys are not being abused, and monitor your egress and ingress points to ensure that that nobody is gaining access to your systems without your permissions. So something to be aware of. And the second notorious group is Hack India, also known as John Wick from our analysis perspective. And this particular group is super active in targeting into the NBFCs, including insurance sector. The same group was actually responsible for breaking into the Twitter account of India's PM, and when they got access to the access tokens. Typically, when we detect any of these large breaches, including in this scenario, we notify the CERT India, so at least they can do their investigation, and we pass on all the details of where this perpetrator is potentially coming from. And in this case, our analysis suggests that they are operating at some place within Pakistan, but using India as one of their hopping channels to further conduct attacks against the Indian companies. One thing to also note about is this group is very organized in terms of it's not a lone wolf, and they have attacked a number of wallet companies operating in the region, as well as a number of tech companies which are quite or heavily working with the banks as well. So I'll give an example that there is a company which I won't name on this call, for obvious reasons, but who actually engages in the two-factor authentication code. So think about when somebody is trying to log into a bank in India using the username and password, and they get a two-factor authentication code, and that code may be coming from this third party, so they can access a third party. So what they tried to do was in the one of the cyber or dark web markets actually showed on how you can send a phishing URL as part of the two-factor authentication code and make people click on it and get their credential harvested out there. Now that particular SMS or messaging provider works with almost every large bank in India, which we have already reported to CERT India as well for their investigation. But that's a very, very interesting case, and not in terms of who they act, but how they act. The modus operandi was quite similar in terms of they gain access to their cloud environment and then basically get access to all the API keys of the banks which they were storing in their databases. And now you can use the API keys to push notifications to the customers if that's what you prefer. A number of these examples are out there, especially when it comes to cybercrime activities. I think what really gets to the point is what can we do in this new era where, from India perspective, there's a lot of new technology startups which are evolving, and they're heavily integrating with the financial and the banking system, which is amazing. At the same time, the regulatory landscape of the region is also changing quite rapidly, especially in the context of the Data Protection Bill 2019, which is currently being discussed and hopefully will be in session early next year. I think there are some clear, there has to be some mitigation strategies on how the risks and these threats can be managed appropriately. So, Rich, do you want to talk about some of the mitigation strategies for the audience?
Yeah, thanks, Beenu, and thanks for navigating us through the dark web there. It's amazing what's available, what is just pretty much a la carte. You can buy whatever you want. It's quite concerning. So how do we protect ourselves? What are some of those things? And obviously in the financial services industry, you guys are one of the most mature out there, which is fantastic. You're doing the right things already. So how do you make sure you up your game to handle all these new attacks that are coming at you? Now, the things you see on screen, I'm not going to go through every one of those. This is mostly hygiene, right? In America, we call it doing your blocking and tackling, just doing the basics of cybersecurity. But there are a couple things I want to call out. First and foremost is make sure you have a practiced incident response plan and an escalation plan. So you need to know what happened. So you need to be able to rapidly identify, contain, and remediate when there's an incident. And if you don't practice your incident response plan, it's not going to go well. This includes making sure you know what you're going to do from a PR perspective, when you need to bring your legal teams in, what you need to do in terms of, your employees if they're impacted, when you send things to customers or what you send to the customers. If you're in a regulated environment, what you have to tell the regulator. So it's quite critical that you practice and understand those impacts. The other thing is, and Beenu hit on this before, DevSecOps. You guys are doing some really cool things. Make sure that you're embedding security into how you design and implement. Don't put credentials in clear text inside a piece of code. Understand who you're doing business with from multiple perspectives. If you're talking about what code base you're using, if you're using open source, if you're using some from GitHub, whatever you might be doing, understand the risks of that code and what it could mean to your larger application. Again, understand who you're doing business with. Again, Beenu touched on this before with the supply chain. If you're using some cool, smart startup to go do some processing for you, are they at the right level of maturity? Do they even understand what sensitive information they're dealing with? So do your due diligence around that. User awareness training. This is bread and butter stuff. Some people believe it's not effective. Some people believe it's one of the most effective things you can do. I'm probably somewhere in between. It is something you have to do. You need to educate people on how to look for phishing. You need to educate people to understand when there's a wire transfer fraud being propagated upon them. There's all these things you just kind of have to do. The other element I want to touch on is multi-factor authentication and account management. Make sure you manage the life cycle of your users, your developers, and obviously your customers as well. And make sure multi-factor authentication is enabled where it needs to be. I suggest it needs to be enabled pretty much everywhere, and what you use for multi-factor authentication matters. You can potentially use SMS as a customer, maybe not. It depends on the risk profile you're willing to accept there. But if you're talking about your administrators, you sure as heck don't want to be using an SMS as your multi-factor authentication. So just think through that, do your risk assessment, and understand what the right thing to do is. And then, understand what threats exist out there in the world. Understand if your information is already in the dark web. So make sure you do, actively monitor the dark web to see what may be out there. That way you're readily able to address anything. If you need to talk to your PR team to know what's happening, you can do that. So a lot of key important things you can do. Beenu, is there anything you want to say to kind of close this out?
I think, Rich, you covered most of it. I think the financial services and insurance sector are probably the best places to work for, given the amount of creativity and innovations that are happening over there. Huge, humongous, opportunities out there. And I think it all boils down to how you manage the risks which are coming along with it. I don't think that the problems which the BFSI is facing at the moment are too complex. They are more complicated. That's what I would use the word here. But I think with the right amount of investments and the right amount of diligence will help the sector to grow even further from where they are today. So with that said, Rich, I think that's all really we have for the presentation today.
Now let's open it up for questions if there are any.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Beenu. It was a wonderful session. I mean, the most important thing, probably the catchy thing when Richard started with the demonetization was the digitization. So people must thought about the night when PM announced that demonetization in India. And yep. I mean, the term you talked about, cybercrime versus ransomware operator, they think same, but just the attack vectors are different. That's very key parameter here. Yep. Mitigation strategy, what Richard just laid out, right? Implement DevOps practices in a correct way, adopt cybersecurity frameworks, practice incident management plan, and definitely monitoring dark web and deep web is the critical factor today, because even if you have everything in place, we don't know what is coming next to you. So thanks a lot for a wonderful session. Hope everyone is able to understand the concept very well, explained by both of our speakers. So if we have any questions, let's start with the questions now.
Hey, Beenu, Richard, this is Rishi. Can you hear me?
Hi, Rishi, I can hear you.
Hey, yeah. Questions, right? One is obviously dark web monitoring and the data available there. If we want to do a targeted campaign or with you guys, and that's not really dark web, one of the scams that companies in India is facing is recruitment scam.
Of course.
And not only India, I mean, they're all over the world, right? Where people are approaching potential candidates via unauthorized channels, whether it's Google Chat or whatever. So if we want to do an activity where we want to look at these actor groups, which are not really, I would say, malicious in terms of computer, but malicious in terms of getting some money out of the potential candidates that they'll get you a job in this company, pay us this amount. Do you have that as a service?
So excellent question, Rishi. As part of our data collection capabilities, where we are collecting data points from over 15 billion pages on a daily basis, there is a good chance that we are already capturing those recruitment drives or potential fake drives which are happening. Now, there are a couple of organizations in the past who basically ask us, hey, can you also collect data from these job websites like Naukri or Monster.com to see if there are anybody who's advertising positions which are not coming from the bank itself? Then the short answer, Rishi, we definitely help those customers as well in detecting those potential scams and frauds. One thing which is very important to note, we talked about what we are good at, but what we are not good at is something I want to be very transparent with everybody for that matter. When it comes to the SMS scams, that's the capability which we are still building. So if it's something is on the web, there are a very good chances, a high probability we'll get a note of it. But when it comes to the direct SMSing, this is something which we are still building at the moment.
Sure. And can you throw some lights on takedowns, Beenu? If there's something found, how does takedown happen?
So, Rishi, there are two parts to the takedowns machinery. The first part is the surface web, so things which anybody can go and see it, and then things in dark web. So in the context of dark web, we mostly work with the government agencies, like 3-letter word agencies of the US, where our intent is not to take down a particular data breach information. We want to take down the entire market. So break down the market itself so that the people are less organized. But that's the motive behind it. When it comes to the surface web, we work with a number of domain registrars. And again, no rocket science. I'm being open about how we do it. We work with organizations like DMCA, who looks into the copyright trademarks infringements and help us in taking them down. Phishing URLs, fake apps, we work with the service providers or hosting companies to take them down as well. And the timing really depends on the complexity of a particular issue you're dealing with. So some phishing URLs, you can bring them down in less than 2 hours. Some things can take for as long as a week or maybe 2 weeks in some cases. So it really varies.
Okay. Thanks, Beenu. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, hi, this is Biju.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Biju.
Yeah, Beenu, recently there was an information like a large number of credit card related information is available in Google Drive, some of the open drives. Do you have any information about that? Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure, Biju. So to start with, there was approximately 103 gigabytes of data, which was uploaded by some hacker or some actor. Let's not call it hacker even. Let's say some actor or entity who posted on one of the Russian cybercrime forum. We also were privy to that information for everybody's knowledge. And we looked at the data itself. There's a couple of things to be noted here. This data did not originate from a bank directly. This was actually data which we believe, from our analysis perspective, came from an aggregator. Aggregators who are just collecting databases from different sources and then basically do B2B, B2B2C marketings on the internet. Now, when we were looking at these credit card data, in our humble opinion, they were basically information which was collected by marketing agencies all over the places, and we believe it came from a very specific company based out of Delhi. From our research perspective, who is selling these data for as low as for $40, and for credit card data which they publish is as low as for $10. So the actual value of that information because it doesn't have a valid credit cards anyway, is quite low. But what really came out from that analysis was there are a lot of aggregators who are operating in the region, and somebody just decided to flood the market by supplying, I think there were over 100 million records when we looked at it. And out of those million, I think over 700,000 records were belonging to the credit card users itself.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Beenu, for that.
Oh, my pleasure, Biju. Thanks for asking.
Hi, Beenu.
Any more question? Yeah, go ahead. We'll take this as a last question, Vikas.
Beenu, this is Manish. Beenu,
Yes,
I would
Manish.
like to understand if someone's data is breached or compromised, how that can be detected.
That's an excellent question, because I mean, something I've been asked many times quite recently. So there are multiple ways on how you can detect this stuff, but I'll tell you how we detect as a company, because I can't obviously comment on other organizations. So there are three mechanisms on how we use the technology from our perspective. The first part is pretty simple, not even rocket science. It's the basic scrapping. So we monitor these markets on close to real-time basis, and we get to know who is selling what and when it's being sold, what are they talking about, and so forth. It's a fully automated process, which takes a minimal time from our perspective. And that's where we learn about some of the low-hanging fruits, which is not even a big brainer in many cases. You can just go to these, even Google about some breaches, and you'll get to the markets where you can download that data for as low as for $10. It's pretty straightforward, no brainer there. The second part is because we also, when it comes to scrapping, we also are I would say we are also collecting data from a lot of the other cybercrime marketplaces. The mechanism is still simple, where once we get access to it, we just basically think about either we can deploy a bot inside it, or we can just collect the data to listen to conversations. I'm sure there are quite a few companies who are, collecting information from P2P chats like, and Telegram chats, where you have a market where you have 60 people and they're all talking about, I'm going to sell this data for that much dollar. So all we do is basically our bot actually collects that chat messages on a real-time basis. And this is how we get to learn about what they are talking in privately. Now, keep in mind, I do not have an army of researchers. We are still a very small organization, so I cannot deploy one person in every market because I then have to hire 1,300 people for that matter. What we have built is creating those bots, which are part of these conversations and just listening and supplying the information, which goes to the third point. In the event, because when a particular event is of high interest to our customers, including Cyble's customer, or to a broader audience, that's where our researchers and escrow network may get involved in order to validate the claims the hackers or the cybercrime groups are making. In those cases is where Cyber will manually intervene. But as you would appreciate, because we can't do it because of the size and scale of company we are today. So, we know about 14,000 breaches so far, and I'm sure there are probably 10x of what's out there. And we are trying to automate our technology as much we can so we can provide a better experience for customers, but at the same time detect these things more proactively and as early as possible.
So, thanks, Beenu. This was Manish, by the way.
Oh, sorry, Manish. My bad.
And Beenu, one last question. How do you eavesdrop to encrypted messages over WhatsApp?
So we do not actually eavesdrop any of the communications. And when it comes to the WhatsApp, it's not that capability we are fully integrated with at the moment. We don't actually have the APIs of today. So WhatsApp groups are only as those specific channels where the research network will directly get involved. What we have done is on the apps such as Keybase and Telegram. And I think what's also important to note, Manish, in terms of what the tools which hackers are mostly using, like Jabber, Telegram, and Keybase, you can collect data from these platforms just with simple integrations via API. And that's where you can start listening to this conversation. And all you got to do is then some build internal tools. So like Cyble has got internal tools and which are linked to our Slack channel. So the moment somebody says, I'm selling this data, our researcher actually gets all these alerts on their mobile phones that on this channel, somebody is talking about some new 20 million records or 50 million records. And I think what's really valuable for the customer is how do we reduce that exposure window for them? And for certain cases, depending on the complexity of that particular problem, we may intervene into it. But we largely let the technology continuously feed this information into a platform.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Keep your internal tools secure. Some of the hacks of internal tools are causing a havoc actually already. So
I appreciate that. You saying it, and as I said, we are also being a target of the same criminals we talked about today, and we are trying our best by putting the right resources into the company to protect them as well. So we are in the same ecosystem for the same for similar reasons.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hi, Virender this side. Can you hear me?
Yes, Varinder, we can hear you.
Yeah. So good afternoon. This is now afternoon.
I'm afraid we are over time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
we are
one
over time.
question. Just
Yes,
one
Virender.
question.
Just one
Yeah.
last question. It is already 12:03, so one last question only.
Yeah. So this is regarding honeypots and canary tokens. Can they be used to identify the breaches?
So, in my humble opinion, honeypots are an excellent example to find the seed of the breaches. You can't actually find the actual the actual crime scene. You can't get there. But what happens is, Virender, once somebody gains access to these credentials, they will try to do credential harvesting, credential stuffing attacks, right? So credential stuffing attacks where you can then create a honeypot network and then ask them to try to log in. So from Cyble perspective, this is a very, very I would say this approach has been around for more than 10 years to my knowledge. I mean, I've seen that. Even in Cyble, we have built honeypot networks across 7 key locations where what we do is we actually host some of these honeypots or websites really, and we let the hackers come and do credential stuffing attacks. So that's how we actually learn about where these attacks are coming from, and are these credentials pointing to specific domains or companies which there's a clear pattern that this company might be compromised. That's why their credentials are being tried on us. So the short answer is yes, there are mechanisms, depends on how you configure your risk models around it. So I'm more than happy to give you some insights on this initiative, because that's exactly what we built recently, Vrinder. The short answer is yes, you can to an extent detect that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think we already have run over time, so I'll pass the screen now to EliteCISO Group. Over to your team.
Thanks, Beenu. Thanks, Richard. Because you want to take it?
Yeah, so we are already 5 minutes over the time. So I will quickly announce the last couple of things as a broadcast message. So if you want to download your participation certificate, which looks something like this, all you got to do is go to EliteCISO website, click on events, go to upcoming events, and click on any of these CP certificate link. Okay, you can click any of that. This form will open, fill up this form, and the secret to download certificate is dark web. There is no space, all small letters, right? Don't capitalize D or give a space. You will not get the certificate. I see a lot of those errors happening. So dark web, one word, and then you can download the certificate. Apart from that, these are the last two events that we are doing next week for 2020. And after that, we will give a break for about 20 days. And then mid-January, we will again start our event. So these are very exciting events. One is around XDR, and the other is around managing your mobile devices, whether they are IoT devices or your cell phones. That's what you can manage with SOTI. So go ahead and register for these events, and there will be some unique giveaways for both the events. The big ones we are planning this time. Okay. And if you are joining us for the very first time, we invite you to join our close WhatsApp group. So we have these WhatsApp group across India for different cities. So if you are CIO or CISO, only then we will add you to the group. We see a lot of vendors and a lot of non-CIO and CISO filling the form. We will not be able to add you to group. So if you are a corporate CIO or a CISO, go ahead and fill this form. Apart from that, we also do a lot of fitness activities. So we have a separate group which is focused on overall fitness. So if you're a fitness enthusiast, go ahead under fitness section, social initiative, CISO fitness, and register over here. We are going to come up with a 325 days of fitness challenge starting 1st January 2021. Okay. In 2020, we completed 300 days of fitness, and a lot of people participated in that and even completed the challenge. So the new challenge is coming for 2021. So that's what you can register, and we will put you in the group. And the last thing that everyone is waiting for is the Wheel of Fortune. What we do is so this list that you see over here has got all the people who registered with their official email ID. Right? I see a lot of people registering with their Gmail and Yahoo. All those have been filtered out. I'm sorry, you are not part of this list. So ensure for the next events, the giveaway is going to be much, much bigger. So when you register for next events, or use your official ID. Okay. So we will run this Wheel of Fortune. One lucky winner will get a charcoal grill this time. And you have to be present in this session to claim your win. So if your name comes, go to the chat and say, yes, you are here. Okay. I'm going to run it now. Best of luck, guys. Let's see. Oh, quick heal. Very nice. Mr. Suresh Patel, are you here? Hemant, can you check the chat if possible? So if you are here, say yes. If not, I'm going to spin it again, and we will spin only for 5 times.
Yeah, we don't have message.
Okay, great. I'm spinning again. Anand Ruhela, very good friend of mine. Anandji, are you there?
He's not also online.
Not online. Okay, I'm spinning again. Otherwise, if till I run for 5 times, if nobody is there, then I will keep the gift. Mr. Surendra from Infosys. No, 3 times. Okay, fourth one. Mr. Amol Shinde. Still
No,
not
we don't.
there, Hemant?
No.
Okay, last one. 5. Okay, 5th time. Arvinder Singh, very nice. Member of our Delhi chapter. Arvinder,
Not
are you
also
there?
online. No.
Okay, then we are done, right? So I'll keep the gift. What do you guys say?
Because do it one more time. Maybe sixth is lucky or seventh is lucky.
Okay, I'm doing it one more. Let's see who the lucky one is. Fahan Rahman. Fahad Rahman. Mr. Fahad, are you there? No? Oh boy, come on. Okay, so shall we spin it one more time?
Yeah,
This is the
we
last
have a lot
time.
of members active.
Okay, this is the last one, guys. Otherwise, I'll keep the charcoal grill. I will have 10 of them in my house now. Manikant Singh, member of Delhi group. Mr. Manikant? No?
It's not also online. No.
I think he
Okay, guys.
texted. I think he did put a message there. He's here.
Manikant is there. Manikant is there.
Manikant is there?
Yep. He's there.
Okay, come on video and show your face so that we know that you are there. Okay. Great. So that's about it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Beenu. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. So next week, we are again meeting on Tuesday and Thursday, last 2 webinars of 2020. Okay, guys. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks for my team.
Take care, everyone.
Vikas, this was a really good webinar. Thanks a lot for arranging.